The rain had started as a light drizzle, tapping gently against the window pane, but by the time Lena looked outside, it had turned into a steady downpour. The kind of rain that made streets shine in reflected neon lights and gave everything a quiet, solemn weight. She had spent the day trying to distract herself, scrolling mindlessly through her phone, checking messages she wasn't really expecting. But nothing could have prepared her for the single line that appeared that evening, glowing on the screen like a spark in the darkness. "I told everyone your secret." For a moment, Lena just stared at it. Her fingers froze mid-swipe. Her heart seemed to stop, and her mind refused to make sense of the words. She reread the message, hoping, against logic, that it had been a mistake, that it wasn't from Alex, that somehow, someway it wasn't real. But the text was clear, cold, and unyielding. Alex, her closest friend for years, the person she had shared everything with, the fears, the dreams, the things she didn't even tell her parents, had betrayed her. And in that instant, Lena felt her world crack. She dropped the phone onto the couch beside her and sank into the cushions. The apartment felt suddenly suffocating. She could hear the rain drumming against the roof, relentless and unforgiving, echoing the turmoil in her chest. Lena's mind raced, trying to remember if she had given any hint of suspicion, any reason, for Alex to betray her. Nothing made sense. They had been inseparable since childhood, sharing secrets like a pact. She had trusted Alex more than anyone. And now, the betrayal hit her like a physical blow, sharp and burning. Her thoughts spun in a whirlwind. Why? Why would Alex do this? Was it jealousy, anger, a mistake, or something more calculated? Lena couldn't tell. She felt exposed, raw, and vulnerable. It wasn't just the secret itself, it was the fact that she had opened her heart to someone who had now turned it into a weapon against her. Every memory they had shared, every laugh, every promise, felt tainted. The trust she had built over years was shattered, and the shards cut deep as the initial shock began to fade. Anger started to take its place. It wasn't a slow, simmering anger. It was instant, hot and fiery, coursing through her veins. Lena felt a pulse in her temples, her hands clenching into fists as she thought about the humiliation she would face. People would look at her differently now. Friends, colleagues, even strangers. She imagined whispers, knowing glances, the subtle judgments that would follow her wherever she went. And Alex would walk away, untouched by the storm they had unleashed. That thought alone made her blood boil. But along with the anger, another feeling took root, the need for revenge. It wasn't just about getting back at Alex. It was about reclaiming power, restoring some sense of control in a situation that had stripped her of dignity. The idea of letting this betrayal go unpunished felt unbearable. Lena could imagine all the ways she might respond. She could expose Alex's lies, show everyone the harm caused, make them feel the weight of her actions. She could watch Alex squirm, helpless under the gaze of those who had been misled. The scenarios played in her mind like scenes from a movie, vivid, emotional, and intoxicating. Still, beneath the desire for retaliation, a quieter, more rational voice whispered doubts. Lena realized that acting out of pure anger could have consequences she hadn't considered. Revenge could make her stoop to a level she didn't want to reach. It could make her complicit in perpetuating pain, and it could damage relationships she still valued. She paused, breathing deeply, trying to reconcile the storm inside her with the logical part of her mind that still clung to reason. As the hours passed, Lena couldn't sleep. She moved through the apartment in a daze. The rain outside now, a steady drumbeat, matching the tension in her chest. She stared at the phone repeatedly, expecting another message, some clarification, or maybe an apology, but none came. The silence from Alex was deafening, and each passing minute felt like another betrayal layered on top of the first. Lena realized that inaction had its own weight. Doing nothing wasn't neutral. It was allowing Alex to walk away without ever acknowledging the pain they had caused. Her thoughts drifted to the secret itself, the one she had shared in confidence. It wasn't trivial, but it wasn't catastrophic either. It was something personal, something that defined a private part of her life. Sharing it had been an act of trust, and its exposure felt like a violation. Every detail she had revealed, every intimate confession, now lay bare for the world, or at least for the circle of people Alex had chosen to tell. Lena felt a mix of shame and anger, humiliation and betrayal, a cocktail of emotions she had never experienced so intensely. By the next morning, the rain had stopped, leaving a fresh, almost surreal calm outside. But Lena felt no relief. She had spent the night planning, imagining, and wrestling with the idea of revenge. She walked through her apartment like a strategist moving pieces on a chessboard, weighing every option, thinking through every consequence. The betrayal had awakened something fierce in her, a determination to regain control, to ensure that she was no longer the passive victim of someone else's actions. Lena decided that before any action, she needed to understand Alex's motives. Was this a thoughtless mistake, a fleeting act of carelessness, or a calculated move meant to hurt her? She replayed every conversation, every interaction, searching for signs, clues, anything that could explain the betrayal. The process was exhausting, but necessary. Each recollection of Alex's words, gestures, and reactions added fuel to the fire. Lena began to see patterns she hadn't noticed before. Small moments of disregard, subtle manipulations, hints that Alex had been capable of this all along. The realization tightened her jaw and set her mind on a path she could no longer ignore. As days passed, Lena started observing Alex more closely in her own subtle ways. She watched for remorse, for guilt, for any sign that Alex might regret the actions. She wanted to see a flicker of humanity, some indication that the betrayal was not entirely heartless. That Alex moved through life seemingly unbothered, laughing with friends, sharing stories, and behaving as if nothing had happened. The nonchalance stung more than the act itself. It was one thing to be hurt, Lena realized. It was another to see the person responsible moving on without a hint of consequence. The growing realization that Alex felt justified, or at least indifferent, added complexity to Lena's feelings. She didn't just want revenge anymore. She needed recognition, acknowledgement of the pain inflicted. She wanted Alex to understand the depth of the wound, to feel a fraction of the helplessness, humiliation, and betrayal she had endured. Yet, even as this desire strengthened, Lena wrestled with the moral weight of acting on it. Could she hurt someone she had once trusted so completely? Could she become the very person she despised? Lena began keeping a mental journal of emotions, tracing the highs and lows, the moments of anger, the spikes of sorrow, and the brief flashes of clarity. Each entry reinforced a single truth. The betrayal had changed her, and nothing would ever be the same. She couldn't erase the pain, but she could decide how to respond. That decision became her obsession. Every choice, every thought, every waking moment revolved around how to navigate this tangled web of hurt, justice, and morality. Days passed, but Lena couldn't shake the weight of Alex's betrayal. Every glance at her phone, every casual message from mutual friends, reminded her of the trust that had been shattered. Her anger no longer burned as a raw spark it had settled into something heavier, more strategic. Lena knew that if she wanted to act, she had to think carefully. Impulses could ruin her plan, and she didn't want to hand Alex power over her emotions again. Lena started observing Alex quietly. She noticed small habits, little ways Alex interacted with others, subtle cracks in their seemingly carefree attitude. Alex laughed with friends, shared stories, and moved through the world without a care. But Lena could see the arrogance behind the smiles. That carelessness had caused the betrayal, and now it was her turn to measure the consequences. She imagined what it would feel like to confront Alex, to make them understand the depth of the hurt caused. The thought both thrilled and terrified her at the same time. Lena wrestled with her conscience. Was revenge the answer? Could she take satisfaction in hurting someone she had once loved and trusted? She replayed memories of their friendship, trying to reconcile the Alex she knew with the Alex who had betrayed her. Every recollection made the decision more complicated. The person who had shared late-night secrets, who had offered comfort during hard times, now felt like a stranger. But the Lena who sat in her apartment, planning, thinking, calculating, was someone new, someone shaped by betrayal, someone capable of careful judgment. She began listing possibilities, mentally rehearsing each scenario. Confront Alex directly, she thought, but that could backfire. Embarrass them in front of friends. That might feel satisfying, but it could spiral out of control. Subtle acts ignoring them, letting them feel uncertainty, might be safer, slower, and just as effective. Each option had consequences, and Lena weighed them like a general planning a battle. The stakes weren't just Alex's feelings, they were Lena's integrity, her sense of morality, and her future relationships. Her mind became a battlefield. Every decision was tied to emotion. Anger, betrayal, humiliation, and a small flicker of hope for understanding. She imagined a confrontation where Alex admitted guilt and apologized. That alone could feel like victory. But what if Alex refused to acknowledge the wrongdoing? What if they laughed it off or twisted the story to make Lena look irrational? The uncertainty fueled her desire for a measured response. It wasn't about cruelty. It was about justice, balance, and reclaiming control over her life. Lena's daily routine became a careful exercise in self-discipline. She observed Alex's social media updates, noting patterns and behavior, while consciously regulating her own emotions. Friends noticed her distraction, the way she drifted during conversations, the intensity behind her gaze. Lena hardly spoke of the betrayal. She knew that venting would only release the tension too soon, and she needed that tension to sharpen her focus. Revenge, she realized, wasn't just about action. It was about timing, patience, and clarity of mind. Meanwhile, Lena explored her feelings deeply, questioning her own morality. Could she cross the line? Could she carry out a plan without losing herself? She replayed every potential outcome, imagining the emotional aftermath. With each scenario, Lena saw herself slightly differently. Confident, decisive, but also cautious. She understood that the path of revenge was not without risk. Acting hastily could harm her reputation, hurt others unintentionally, or even cause regret. But not acting could leave her powerless, trapped in the memory of betrayal. She also reflected on Alex, imagining their perspective. Perhaps Alex had rationalized the betrayal, believing it was harmless or justified. Lena realized that in any conflict, each side believes in the righteousness of their actions. This awareness added complexity to her plan. It wasn't enough to act. She had to act smartly, in a way that was calculated, intentional, and meaningful. She wanted Alex to feel the impact, but she didn't want to stoop to mindless cruelty. Every night, Lena returned to her thoughts, mentally rehearsing confrontations and responses. She wrote notes in her journal not for action, but for clarity. What did she want from Alex? An apology? Understanding? Closure? Or simply the quiet satisfaction of knowing that betrayal had consequences? The answers shifted daily, reflecting her evolving state of mind. Lena knew the final act was still far away, but she was preparing, mentally and emotionally, for the moment it would arrive. Tension became a constant companion. Lena's sleep was restless, punctuated by dreams where Alex laughed or shrugged. Off guilt. She woke with her heart racing, realizing that her desire for revenge had grown beyond anger. It was now part of her identity, part of her sense of justice. The line between patience and obsession blurred, and Lena understood that the next steps would require not just courage, but self-control. Then one evening, as she watched Alex leave a cafe, surrounded by friends and oblivious to the storm Lena carried inside, she felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and apprehension. The plan was forming, not in violence but in strategy. Lena realized revenge didn't have to be dramatic or explosive. It could be subtle, quiet, and controlled. She didn't need to yell, confront, or humiliate. She could reclaim power by acting with precision, letting Alex face the consequences. Naturally, guided by the ripple effects of her carefully chosen moves. The struggle wasn't just external. It was internal. Lena wrestled with her own morality, her desire for fairness, and the emotional consequences of action versus inaction. She recognized the power in restraint, the strength in patience, and the clarity in reflection. Yet she also felt the pull of anger, a reminder that she had been hurt, and that human emotions are never fully rational. By the end of the week, Lena felt ready to act, but not yet. She had mapped out possibilities, rehearsed emotional outcomes, and strengthened her moral compass. The struggle had transformed her, sharpening her instincts and clarifying her intentions. She wasn't just a person wronged. She was a thinker, a strategist, and someone who understood the stakes. The revenge she sought would not be impulsive. It would be precise, measured, and meaningful. As she closed her journal that night, Lena looked out the window at the city lights twinkling through the dark. The storm had passed, but the tension remained. The struggle within her had become a quiet driving force, a preparation for the inevitable confrontation. She knew the moment of choice was approaching, and when it came, she would face it fully aware of the consequences, fully in control of her emotions, and fully ready to decide not just Alex's fate, but her own. The day Lena had been anticipating finally arrived. She had spent weeks observing, planning, and wrestling with her own emotions. Every morning she had rehearsed what she might say. Every night she had imagined how it would feel to confront Alex. And now, as she sat in the quiet corner of the coffee shop where they had agreed to meet, her heart raced with anticipation. The air felt heavy, charged with possibility, as if even the walls knew this moment was pivotal. Alex arrived, laughing as if nothing had happened, their casual demeanor a sharp contrast to the storm brewing inside Lena. She felt a rush of conflicting emotions: anger, hurt, and a flicker of sadness. This person, who had once been her closest friend, now carried the weight of her betrayal without a trace of acknowledgement. Lena's grip on her coffee cup tightened. She had choices, and each carried consequences that she could already feel, pressing against her chest. For a moment, Lena considered unleashing everything. Words that had been rehearsed for weeks lingered on the tip of her tongue. She could confront Alex publicly, make them feel the sting of exposure, force an apology. She imagined the satisfaction of seeing Alex's surprise, confusion, or even guilt. But as she looked into Alex's eyes, something unexpected happened. She saw not a villain, but a human being, flawed, careless, perhaps selfish, but not cruelly malicious. The clarity hit her like a splash of cold water. Revenge would hurt her as much as it would hurt. Lena took a deep breath and let the rehearsed words dissolve. Instead, she chose calm, measured conversation. "I know what you did," she said, her voice steady but soft. "I know my secret is out, and I know you didn't seem to care." Alex froze for a second, their smile fading as they registered the weight behind her words. Lena continued, "I trusted you, and that trust is gone. I needed to see you, to understand, but I won't let this control me anymore." Alex looked down, shifting uncomfortably. I didn't mean to hurt you," they said, the words lacking polish but carrying a hint of sincerity. "I thought it wouldn't matter. I thought it was harmless." Lena listened, noting the small signs of remorse, the hesitation in Alex's tone. It was not an apology she had demanded. It was a glimpse into someone's awareness of wrongdoing. However, the room seemed to shrink as Lena's emotions surged and receded, a tide she had learned to navigate over the past weeks. She could still feel the anger, the sting of betrayal, but it no longer demanded action. She realized that revenge, in its most satisfying form, wasn't about causing harm. It was about reclaiming power, choosing dignity over retaliation, and finding peace within herself. That realization shifted something deep inside her, uncoiling the tension she had carried like a heavy chain. Lena decided to speak, not with accusation, but with assertion. "I'm moving forward," she said, her voice steady and confident. "I won't let this define me, and I won't let it control my actions. You'll face your own consequences, whatever they may be, but I choose my own path now." Alex nodded slowly, a quiet acknowledgement of her words, perhaps understanding more than they could express. In that moment, Lena felt a release she hadn't expected. The weeks of planning, the sleepless nights, the inner struggle, all of it, condensed into a single clear choice. She would not perpetuate pain. She would not allow betrayal to dictate her life. And in that choice, she found a surprising sense of power, a satisfaction that was quieter, but far more enduring than the fleeting thrill of revenge. As they parted, Lena walked out of the coffee shop into the cool evening air. The city was alive, buzzing with movement and light. But for the first time in weeks, Lena felt a stillness inside her. She had faced the climax of her emotional journey, confronted the source of her pain, and chosen a path that honored her values. The betrayal had shaped her, but it had not broken her. She carried the lessons forward, aware that life would present challenges, but confident in her ability to navigate them with integrity. Over the following days, Lena's interactions with others began to shift. She reclaimed a sense of autonomy and clarity that had been missing, approaching relationships with careful trust and clear boundaries. Alex continued on their own path, now subtly aware that actions carry consequences, even if unspoken. Lena did not need to see or measure the results. Her victory was internal, quiet, and deeply satisfying. The climax of her struggle had not ended with dramatic confrontation, nor had it delivered immediate retribution. Instead, it had provided something far more valuable: self-mastery, moral clarity, and freedom from the grip of anger. Lena realized that revenge, while tempting and emotionally compelling, rarely brings the closure one imagines. True resolution comes from understanding, reflection, and the courage to act with integrity rather than impulse. By the time the sun rose the next morning, Lena's world felt brighter, lighter, and more open. The betrayal that had once seemed insurmountable had become a catalyst for growth, forcing her to confront her own values, desires, and resilience. She understood that life would continue to present moments of hurt and challenge, but she had learned that the choice of response mattered more than the offense itself. Lena walked forward, carrying the lessons of betrayal as tools rather than burdens, ready to face the future with wisdom, strength, and quiet confidence.